This is our piece, Street Lamp B. It's made by both of us. I'm Trinh, by the way.
I'm Kyrin.
And our programmer, Ning Sun. She's currently in China, so unfortunately she cannot be here with us today. So we are a collective called Steam Bow, and this is the second piece of our sort of series of interactive art pieces. So Street Lamp B features a street lamp called Street Lamp B, as in its role as an NPC or non-player character in this game, and it interacts with multiple character lamps who come in and talk to it. This video game is a text-based game, and it was made using Unity and Blender, as well as Fungus, which is a plugin for Unity. The text is actually made during the workshop that we held here 2 weeks ago. And so the choices that you see on the screen, which you can click on, were actually written by people who took this workshop, so it was really lovely. We thought it was a really interesting process to open up the video game making, to not just be free for the people who play it, but also to be free and creative for the people who make it as well. And so we really tried to explore this idea of like interactive improvisational writing and text and all that. And I came from it from a theater background of improv, but Kyrin came from it from a musical sort of background of improv.
Yeah, so basically during the workshop there's like three kind of parts that we going through. This is like a very quick summary of that. So the first part, we started by introducing some of the art pieces that has interactive aspects to it, some art games that is kind of situated like in the boundary between like what is art, what is game. And people ask me, okay, so tell me about the piece. And when I say, oh, it's a video game, then the first thing that comes to their mind is, first person shooting. But this is not exactly that. So I think during the workshop, I think it's good to kind of situate like our conversation within like, okay, you can do whatever art, like video game does not have to be, bang, bang, bang. It could just be a novel that people choose how it goes. So then in the second part, we kind of talk a little bit more about like what is improv, and because it's such like interesting kind of approach. Especially within like collective practice in theater, in music, and but rarely in writing, which we're both very interested in, kind of like working together as a team and how we kind of navigate each one's role. So the second part is kind of like let people to kind of respond to some kind of prompts and like what we actually wrote. In the four parts of these conversations. So what they came up with are either kind of like according to what they think those characters are, or their actual honest response, which I think is very interesting to kind of having all those like feedbacks from people and then just providing them, an image of lamp, and then they tell you, okay, what's the lamp's name, where what kind of character that lamp is. This is Tiffany. She's very fancy. She kind of comes from a rather rich background,
but she's pretending to be, one of the people. So
yeah. So all this like interesting kind of conversation from the workshop, it went really well, and then people wrote pages of response, and then kind of we put them in as like the options, and I think in that sense really effective.
Yeah, and putting the text into the game itself, we really tried to play with the idea of agency, especially in video games, because video games are all about player agency, but what happens when you try to strip that away slowly, so therefore you bring more attention to it in some ways. So you're playing as Street Lamp B, which in and of itself is an NPC character. And if you click through the text, you'll realize that the choices that you make ultimately don't matter. So we really tried to play around with that.
But you don't know that until the second time you replay the same dialogue. Because I know that, because it was like I was like standing next to the player during the preview and just like look at how people choose, and then they're super cautious about each option, and I'm just like, Yeah, it doesn't matter, but we're having fun. It's great. But yeah, this is one of the kind of interesting thing that because when during the process of making it, well, practically, if every response, every option leads to another, entire different route, then it's a huge amount of work. But we managed to do this within, I don't know, a month, less than a month. So in that sense that whenever you choose an option, the answer is always going to be, our scripted answer. So how people kind of interpret the relationship between those option choice and kind of what it actually shows up is also interesting. That how they interpret. Oh, is it what the the street lamp is actually thinking, but he's not allowed to say it, or is it something else going on? So, which I think in that sense is very interesting for me.
Yeah. I always thought Street Lamp B felt like one of those cashier people who are holding in all the things they want to say. But maybe that's just the peacocks talking.
There's definitely that. Definitely see that,
yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
When my son was playing it privately, he called it the talking machine. And I don't know, I was just interested, why, because he obviously took it as him getting to talk when he was playing it. I thought that was quite interesting, a kind of choose your own adventure style thing.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. I think it's also part of the design of the game, how everybody interacts with it differently. The strength, I think, of video games or interactive art, which we're calling it to make it sound fancy, Yeah, but I genuinely loved watching children play the video game because they come from it from such a open, experiential way, and they were so excited to see new lamps and new characters.
Yeah, one of the kids, I think, he just he got very excited about all these options, and he reads out all the text, and then he's like, oh, what should I choose? What should I choose? And that's my favorite moment. It's standing next to him, yes.
Yeah.
We thought about using, GPT-3. GPT-3 is you can train it using natural language text, and it gives you back responses, related to what you've trained it with. It's using some chatbots, because we've done theatre performances with it. Might be worth having a look at.
Great. We'll definitely check it out. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.